I invest in individual stocks. I used to invest in ETFs primarily. And the stocks I invest in, it's in part because of the job I work, where I do research on individual companies. And through my company, we advise on building portfolios of individual stocks. At times that includes other funds as well, but that's kind of our bread and butter is the basket of individual stocks. And so my own portfolio reflects that same strategy.
Do you think it's possible to beat the market then?
Yeah, tough question. It's funny because that often comes up when talking on the channel, and especially because I highlight a lot of stats. And if you look at the data and the stats, there's not a lot in favor of that approach. I think, is it possible for someone to do better than the market? Sure, of course it is, because you're going to have some people above the curve, some people below the curve. Is it easy to do that? Absolutely not. It's very difficult. Do I think it's worth pursuing that strategy? It really depends on what your interests are in. And, for my own company, like we've had years where we beat the market, we've had years where we don't beat the market. And it's, I don't claim to be the best portfolio manager or stock picker out there, which is why I try to be very agnostic with those things. But I think the whether someone should, say, take that strategy of picking individual stocks really comes down to your views on risks and your interest in research and things like that. I think if you have interest in research and you want to be more particular with the risk you take on and things like that, I think there's a lot of room to explore picking individual stocks. But if you're someone who doesn't have the interest to dive into stocks and you don't want to go down the route of education in that front, I think there's a lot of other great strategies. And I see it as a bit of a marginal difference where you might, if you do it smart, you might marginally beat the market, you might marginally underperform, but it's not a meaningful deviation where you should expect, if you go stock picking, you're going to beat the market by 10% regularly or anything of that sort.
Do you think then good researcher basically almost shifts the odds, like in a casino, say, someone who knows how to play blackjack might shift the odds in their favor slightly? Is that what you're saying? It's like a small amount.
I think it can. And it always depends on the approach that's taken, but I think it does to an extent. And kind of the reason why, I pick individual stocks versus, say, ETFs, even though I view ETFs and index funds as a really beneficial tool for a lot of people, is I just like to have a better understanding of where my money's invested. And it's almost a bit of a more personal choice on that front. I view it as a risk degree as well. Like diversifying risk does definitely act as a risk tool that's in most people's arsenal that they can use. But when it comes to investing in individual stocks, I can understand the business, understand the risks they face and my exposures there. And I think, whereas if you take a more passive approach with an index, you're sort of kind of accepting the risk of the market. Now, it's a very generalized risk, so it's not a meaningful issue to face. But that's kind of my one view there. And the other side of it as well is I don't, even when you say invest in the S&P 500, I think there's no real true passive strategy that exists out there. And I think everyone's making an active approach, even if you buy just an S&P index fund, because you're saying, well, I think market weighted US focused indices are going to perform better over the near term. So, part of it is that as well, whereas I don't necessarily see index investing as a true passive investing form. It's definitely more on the passive spectrum than, say, individual stocks, but you're still making active decisions there. So I'm just being more proactive.
That was a short clip from our full interview with finance legend Richard Coffin from The Plain Bagel. You can check out the full interview right here.